I am also sending the link of Facebook Live here.
Okay. Thank you everybody for coming and watching us online. This lecture is held within the frames of architecture, Tbilisi Architecture Biennial. And today's lecturer will be Lorenzo Degli Esposti from Milan. Metaform team organized the international workshop on critical analysis of Georgian architecture in the frames of Tbilisi Architecture Biennial. The workshop hosts prominent and keynote international architects and urban thinkers, architectural theorists, artists to reflect the concept of formal reading in the discourse of architectural theory. In today's lecture, we have special lecturer and architect Lorenzo Degli Esposti, who will examine the drawings of the palazzo. The online lecture will be followed by an open discussion moderated by Metaform team. Lorenzo earned a PhD in architecture and urban design in 2008 with a thesis on composition processes in art and architecture. In 2006, Lorenzo Degli Esposti became founding partner and director of Degli Esposti Architects. During Expo 2015, Lorenzo was appointed as a curator of Padiglioni Architettura of Regione Lombardia, and then Degli Esposti has been teaching architectural composition and landscape and giving the lectures and critiques in several Italian and European universities from 2006. He writes articles and essays on art, architecture, and urban design. He is the editor of the several significant books, Deep Milano, on Milanese Palazzo, 2016, and the book Milan, Capital of the Modern, which was published in 2017. In 2018, Degli Esposti had his PhD thesis published, and the book Operazioni in Arte e in Architettura. Lorenzo is responsible for the tasks and commissions as the director of Degli Esposti Architects and focuses on the artistic direction and concept development activities by the firm. One of the final works by Degli Esposti Architects is Residence of Carlo Erba in Milan, collaboration with Peter Eisenman Architects and Guido Zuliani. I personally had the great opportunity to make very modest contribution in the development on this project while I was working at Degli Esposti Architects in 2018. Metaform team would like to say special thanks to Lorenzo Degli Esposti for very enthusiastic and energetic involvement in the development of Metaform workshop. He was the initiator of special concepts for the structure of the workshop and the person who helped the team to invite very special architects and theorists as the lecturers and final jury members. We believe that the collaborative character made this workshop very special, thanks to the founding partners and all the members of Tbilisi Architectural Biennale, international and local lecturers, students, sponsors, and all the people who made all this happen. So, great pleasure to welcome Lorenzo Degli Esposti to this special event.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nodar. Thank you, all of you, Metaform and Tbilisi Biennial, to this opportunity to talk about some topics which is unusual. I mean, I was really surprised when I received the first contact about this activity some months ago. I mean, who is going to make a workshop about formal analysis? It is very rare. It is very unusual. And for this reason, it is very important to me. And I was really happy to be part, to be helping Metaform group in the organization, but I didn't do anything in the end. I just tried to give some suggestions based on my past experience in organizing some workshops which can be thought as precedents of this one. And I think that to organize a workshop about the reading of architecture, it's something which can be very, very helpful. I mean, students today are always, students and amateur are always and more and more taken into this image chaos. I mean, we get images everywhere, and we are very distracted by this. All socials, YouTube. I mean, we are on YouTube, I think now, which is good, but we are not YouTubers. Okay, maybe we have on our mobiles games. We play on our mobiles, but we are not gamers. How do you call them? And first of all, we wouldn't like to be influencer. Okay, in Italian, we can say very easily this because influenza is a illness also in Italy. It's not just to influence somebody in a good way. It is also an illness, influenza, and we are experiencing very hard times nowadays. So keep your masks. It is very unreal. All the conditions which we are facing, but at least using these digital means, we are able to talk. So I'm not against them. I'm not against computers. I'm not against any means which can, implement, augment, how they say, our perceptions, our connections, and so on. So I'm not against all of this. But I have to say that for some generations, these conditions are really immersive, are really powerful. I mean, much more than me. I don't know how the brains of the various generations is facing this incredible spreading of technology. I mean, there are studies, we are architects, so we don't know. We don't care even. I don't care how the socials can influence architecture. This is ridiculous, okay? Socials are ways of talking, maybe. I don't know, because I don't have Facebook. I edit Facebook and I hate it so much that I went out because it was so stupid. You were always there. How many people are here? It is very stupid. Come on, if we are 10 people here, it's okay. We can talk. I mean, if we are interested, it is something very valuable. And so this gamers, influencers shit is something that YouTuber, come on, I cannot understand. But the reason, because I'm here, even if I'm not here, I'm not there in Tbilisi, I'm here in Milano, but the reason why I'm here talking with you is because your workshop is unusual, okay? And I liked the idea to have people studying your architecture, which is an opportunity as any other architecture is. I mean, we can study architecture from Renaissance, we can study architecture from a very specific geographical area, time, whatever, even more than one. I will go to present some readings we made during the last 10 years about different areas. I mean, it's always in Italy, I mean, we made more also about other kind of architecture from other countries, but what I'm going to present here is about Italian architecture, mostly modern, but starting with some other examples from 16th century, and then focusing on Novecento, not as a style, so 20th century, the modern architecture, and finishing showing something contemporary. So let's start, because we have around 1 hour, 1 hour and 10, more or less. Let's see. I have to find a way. Okay. So this is Campidoglio in Rome, and you can see Palazzo del Senato, which is 920, where there is today the city hall of the city. And we will speak about 919 and 918, which are two twin facades, let's say, buildings, even if the 911 was an older building which was taken by Michelangelo and refurbished, changed accordingly to a new idea of the Campidoglio under Paolo III, who wanted to have here one of the focuses of Rome because of archaeological ruins and relics found here. And this place became actually something very, very special. Those drawings are not, of course, by Michelangelo or Della Porta, who was the one who finished the buildings. Those are the drawings we used to analyze the building. I mean, the students used. I'm going to show you drawings made not by myself, but my classes, and also by other people involved in our studies. We do this also in our office, in Degli Esposti Architetti. We go on studying things and drawings like this. And those are originals on the left. On the top, you will see you are seeing original drawings by Michelangelo. In the bottom left, you see a plan by Della Porta. On the right, you are starting to see these formal analysis drawings made by students of the first year. So they were 19 years old. That was very, very significant to me to see these people just out of the high school, and let's say they found themselves in these classes talking about formal analysis, something they maybe were not interested or couldn't care less, but they made even significant examples of let me see, of reading. In this case, the important thing to see here is that these drawings are set on equal measures. Just bear in mind this. The modulus, the intercolumnation is equal. Then we will see another example which is different. Of course, we could stay here 1 hour to talk about this, but I would like to show you different examples which can be useful also for your workshop. And of course, we could stay here to talk about the Ordine Gigante, the kind of pattern we found there is in the drawings and in the building, all the shapes which can be found there. But we will see. I mean, let's go on. Let's do a warm-up also here, so we can see vertical repetitions, horizontal layering. It's often a matter of repetition. how things are repeated from the one side. From the other side, the point is how there is the one, unity. So unity from the one side and repetition from the other side. And there are opposite, of course, concerns and ideas. The one, duality, repetition, series, and also patterns. Kinds of patterns, which can be bilateral symmetrical or other kinds, which we are going to see. Another example we studied by Palladio this time, it's Palazzo Chierica. That one was the Palazzo dei Conservatori by Michelangelo and then Della Porta, who completed it after the death of the master. And here we are in Vicenza, great place to visit, and strongly encourage you to go to Vicenza, even if it's a small place. But I mean, Palladio and Vicenza are the one thing together. This is one of the most important palazzi by Palladio, which was also, let's say, influenced by his villas. And this is another important example of reading. Also here we have an equal modulus, as you can see. But for example, here you see we have this doubling of the columns between the central part and the two bays, for example. So that is a difference. I mean, you need to look at the drawings, and try to get even little differences. I mean, this is very obvious, but if you go on in redrawing all the drawings you have, you will find a lot of different ideas which can be represented, which can be even found, and maybe they were not intentional. Maybe they were. And here we can see what this other group of students made in terms of analyzing plans, elevations, and also in isometrics. They, let's say, analyze the drawings in the building. And of course, all of these methods, even if they are being changed, because as long as you redraw, you will find your way and you will find different possibilities in reading. But of course, after all of this, there are seminal books, and the entire activity of Peter Eisenman, who is going to talk the day after tomorrow, and it's more than 50 years, 60 years that Peter Eisenman is studying drawings of architecture and writing books about architecture using drawings. I mean, this is not an history as an historian can do. This is a history as an architect can do, drawing. Here we are. This is a very important book by Eisenman, some 4 or 5 years ago, about Palladio. The studies were older, of course, and the book is at the end of always a cycle of studies. And here we can see this particular kind of representation of volumes. So the interior volumes which are contained by the elements of architecture, by walls, by slabs, by anything which is real, which is built. But here it's represented the opposite. And there is a famous precedent about this, which are the models made by Luigi Moretti and published in its magazine Spazio. They were model made representing the voids. So the voids were built, and the pictures were published, and you could see, you can see today, the space which is contained within the structure, within the real thing. And this is really important, because even if it is, let's say, the same or the opposite, as you can see, I mean, if I have a room with 4, of course, walls, 1 ceiling, 1 floor, okay, I have the elements, and I have this cube, or whatever it is, the shape, the volume, and they are complementary. They are the same things seen from 2 different points of view. And of course, representing the voids, it's a very powerful way to understand the ideas which are under what you see. Others in plants, and again, you see there they are represented walls or voids. And of course, other details, that is the close reading, so a very close reading of details which can be which can orient the interpretation of one or more ideas in the building. And there are many. I mean, the same building can convey different ideas, and one of the powerful means of discussing about reading architecture is that you can, in reading architecture, find things which normally are, let's say, left over. I mean, they are not considered. Any kind of encoding of architecture tends towards, let's say, the suppressions of differences, the suppression, the erasure of differences. The normative attitude of human activities tend to remove what it is, let's say, intended as not consistent, as not coherent. Okay, the reading is a method which can find anything which is not consistent, everything which is not coherent. And that is very good, because in this case, we can find something which is not the official version, something which is not the standard, something else. Palazzo Barberini is a very important building in Rome, again, made in succession by different architects, very, very important, like Maderno, who set the building, and then after his death, Bernini was continuing the construction with Borromini about some details and some parts. There are some consideration about his involvement in the stairs or in some ornaments of the windows. Anyway, they were all working there. This is a very important building with this structure, which is still bilateral symmetrical, but you see it tends to be an addiction of different bodies, like some of the buildings by Palladio, where he put the barchesse. So they were wings, usually devoted to functional uses. But here we have real wings of the palazzo, which are primary spaces. and the entire palazzo, the principal facade is there set back, and this is much different than, this is very different than the former Italian palazzi. And this was developed then in France. If you think the hotel in France, which is a type, it's exactly like this, with the street in front of the little courtyard, which is the entrance, and the two wings protruding and going until the street. There are very important examples, even signature buildings by Ledoux, for example, that is exactly this scheme, this type. And here we are with the other analysis. Again, people of 19 years, people 19 years old, 20 years old, which studied this building. And this is the idea I was talking about on the left, you see. But there are other readings which are, in the longitudinal way, in the transversal way, different possibility of reading the same object. And then again in the volumetric reading. This is important palazzo in Milano by Piermarini and completed by Cantoni, made for the family Belgioioso, which is the family of the Belgioioso in the BBPR. So it's a very old family in Milano. And this is a urban palazzo, very important, of course, in the city center. We are in the second half of the 18th century. The other house you see, the small one in the foreground, that is the house of Alessandro Manzoni, one of the, let's say, most important national poet of Italy of 19th century, the one of the Promessi Sposi. And here we have Piermarini, has the master of neoclassical architecture, which is very important in Milano, especially. Not only, of course, there are the revolutionary architects, Ledoux, Boulez, we all know them. There is the Kaufmann book, but it is very important even in Milano, and it is one of the paths which goes back of abstraction. I mean, during the neoclassical period in Milano, little by little at the end of 18th century and then in the 19th century, first half, the orders tended to disappear. I mean, what was the principal language of architecture, the one of the orders, were softened, and even there is a very famous villa on Lago di Como Lake, by Albertolli, which is flat. I mean, the facade is flat with no orders, no columns. Okay, I didn't put that one here. Of course, the more abstract, the more difficult is the reading. I mean, if you have the order and you have all these elements, it's much easier. Even if here you can see the facade is very flat as well. I mean, it started here. This is the drawing, half. Since it is symmetrical, you can draw half. And this is interesting because you see here that on the right part, I mean, it's symmetrical. On the right part, you can see that there is a different tension between the pillars, the columns, which are lesene, so they are more than half within the wall, and also the openings, the windows. There are different patterns and different tensions. I mean, the modules are different, but there is one module behind everything, which is the red. In the red, on the left part in red, it is drawn, and so we have a single module which is constant, And you can see 4 of it make the big module. 3 of the big module make half of the facade. So even if there is this different tension among the windows, you see there are other kind of circles in black on the left part. The modulus underneath is constant, and then there are variation of modulation in the real ornaments and even in the openings. But still, we have this sort of equal rhythm underneath. And then we are here with Giovanni Muzio, who was one of the greatest admirers of Cantoni, who finished Palazzo Belgioioso after Piermarini. Simone Cantoni, a very neoclassical second generation architect. He made Palazzo Serbelloni, very important. I mean, we could stay here 2 months. Okay, we don't have time. Muzio was really an admirer of Simone Cantoni, and the entire style Novecento, which is not, I mean, somebody says it is already modern, somebody else says, no, this is something classical, but we have already seen that the neoclassical tended toward abstraction. So it's very useless to say this is classical, this is not classical, this is modern, this is not modern. I mean, it's much better to look the specific buildings, the succession, a series of different buildings, and to see how they are linked together. And here in the Cabrutta, this is one of the most famous buildings in Milano. In the Cabrutta, we have 2 important concepts. One is the horizontal layering, you can see, and the other one is this superimposition of different rhythm, which comes from, as you can see, as we have seen, which comes from this different pattern in already in the neoclassical period. But here, I mean, we are doing some studies about this with Duccio Prassoli, and he's discovering very interesting things we don't want to say to you because it's a secret. we will see maybe in the future. Okay, we are studying it, we are always studying it, and sometimes we are jealous about the new discoveries. We made an incredible discovery with another guy, a student, about the Moretti building. I'm not going to tell you. Not at all. I mean, we need to think about it more. And this is the Cabrutta. The Cabrutta is important for many things. One is that it is not built along the perimeter of the block. I mean, Muzio decided to have a street in between. And so you must know that in Milano, if you do something which is not aligned along the street, you are a criminal. But Muzio didn't do that, okay? So maybe or Muzio was a criminal or we are not criminals. I mean, we have to talk about this. This is a great example. I mean, they say, okay, on the one side, it is along the street. On the other side, he creates a new street which cuts the block into pieces. And then he put the arch there. This is a sort of Serliana, modern Serliana. And this is a drawing by Claudio Sberna, a former student of me. We were analyzing the short facade of the long building among the two, the north one. And here, all the reading is based not on a drawing, but on a picture, on a photograph made by Maurizio Montagna. We are doing this with this photographer who is specialized in taking this flat picture of facades. And so the point is to see what is visible really and not from the drawing, and compare the drawing and the picture, which is very different, because, for example, here you cannot see the last floor. The penthouse is totally not visible, but there is, as we can see here, there is another floor there. I mean, this is the other part on the left, that is part of the south building. As you can see, a part of the south building, it's bilateral symmetrical with that other short facade of the north building, because the south building and the north both are made by these, let's say, repetitions of fragments, let's say. And you will see on Wednesday, during the Eisenman lecture, that this attempt to break with congenitas is something which could be studied, could be thought about. I mean, from Renaissance, congenitas, so the idea of the building as an organism, and you cannot cut pieces of organism. You need to have an entire consistency. It is a very strong idea. It is a very strong persistency in architecture, but it is not good in itself. I mean, it is not good, neither bad. It is an idea. Other ideas are not to have this kind of consistency. So to have a composition which is based of parts which are not governed and ruled by only one system, only one idea. And the Cabruta is an important precedent about this, but even the Palazzo Belgioioso, as we have seen, it's another precedent. It's another example. Even if you say to anybody Palazzo Belgioioso, they would say neoclassical bilateral symmetry. That's all. This is another important example by De Finetti, who was another of the heroes of Novecento, of the Novecento style. But for example, here, even if Novecento style, which was not only in architecture, was a very cultural, not even a movement, because they didn't have a manifesto. I mean, it was a way of producing things, from literature to architecture to paintings. And here, I mean, one of the usual truth which cannot be discussed are that as the building is an organism, and classical buildings are bilateral symmetrical, which is not true, because there are classical buildings which are not bilateral symmetrical, and also the Novecento style, which is the most, I mean, if you talk with somebody, they might say that Novecento is just classical, and yes, there was abstraction, there was modernity in it, but that was pure conservatorism and so on. I mean, it's very debated and not so mainstream. But in this case, Giuseppe De Finetti made a building which is not bilateral symmetrical. Okay, you have just to see, it is not. To be bilateral symmetrical, you have to add another wing on the left, which is not there. So it is not. Okay, this is something which is not classical, even if it is one of the most important buildings of Novecento. And here, this scheme was made by a student, Niccolò, who made this. And he said, to have a bilateral symmetry, I would add another piece there. So to keep maybe the golden ratio, De Finetti decided not to have a bilateral symmetry. You see the golden ratio? No, it's not a golden ratio, it's a root 2. No, it's a golden ratio. The central part of the facade is a golden ratio. to keep that one as a golden ratio, the facade was cut into two pieces, and the symmetry is not there. It's not a bilateral symmetrical building. Here we have a other important building by Gio Ponti and Emilio Lancia, which were made by two people, two architects. They always, in the first part of Ponti's career, they often worked together. And here we have, I mean, two buildings which are, let's say, attached somehow. A cube, which is not a cube, and it's the L, which is this, and then the tower. And those are readings made in classes and also in workshops about the repetitions in elevation of the two. And also the modules in plans. It's interesting, this building, because since it is two buildings attached, typologically, the right one, which is westward, here is on the right, the tower by Lancia, has a very curious mutation. I mean, and it started a type, which is the turret, let's say, which is not a tower. It's something which is between the tower and the slab. And bear in mind this, because Casa Rustici by Terragni has the same type. Who can say that Terragni is the same that Lancia? Nobody can. This is by Portaluppi, another of the masters of, let's say, conservatorism, even if there is a famous drawing by Portaluppi for a fantastic, not real building with the triangle balconies, like Bjarke Ingels. So I don't know, strange. And this is the Palazzo Ina in Piazza Diaz, which is interesting because, as you can see in top right, we have the tower with the balcony for going there and talk to all the people in the piazza. You know, the time was tough there. We have again a sort of Serliana arch linking this one to the other building, which is a very important building there, Engario, by four architects together: Portaluppi, Muzio, Griffini, and Magistretti. And now they want to add. It's in front, on the side of the Duomo, facing the piazza. I think they want to add a bridge to link the two towers. They are crazy. Okay, we will see. They want to, and it's a very stupid idea, because from the Galleria Vittorio Emanuele, looking in between the two buildings of Arengario, which is near to this building, you can see the Torre Martini, by an interesting building in the post-war period, Second World War, by Mattioni, who was a very, very prolific architect who built a lot in few years, because he died before 50s, before he was 50. And the Terrazza Martini, on the top of the Tower Martini, it is there in order to be seen from the Galleria Vittorio Emanuele in front of it. And if you put a bridge, I mean, you are going to cut the Terrazza Martini. That is crazy. Anyway, you don't know what I'm talking about. It's not a problem. But maybe there are some Italians that say, well, let's do the bridge. I don't care, a bridge by Italo Rota. This is craziness, complete craziness. Anyway, in this building on the right, top right drawing, made by another student during COVID. These analyses were made during COVID. Very strange. I said, even if there is COVID, I cannot go out. Okay, let's draw again anyway. But with people I have never met before. Crazy. And then some of them I met. And some of them are collaborating with us now. And I mean, it was so strange. So we started to do this formal analysis during the COVID, because the students have to do the internship. And so I said, okay, let's try to do this. And very interesting things came out. And there you can see, top right, that the balcony on the left, where the building bends, somehow can be read as the counterpart of the tower, as if the building is bilateral symmetrical, even if it is not. And I think it is like this. I mean, when Portaluppi was there and was drawing, he said, okay, let's do the balcony here. I mean, look at the drawing, top right. He made the balcony there because of the tower on the right. So if you draw this, maybe you can see. And there are a lot of other things, but we are short of time. Here it is, Casa Rustici by Terragni and Ingeri, one of the most famous Russian razionalisti building from the modern movement in Milano, Italy, between the wars. And here you see there the turret type, which is a slab somehow, but it has the core facing one of the facades. And here we have somehow a bilateral symmetry with the addition of that square on the left. And that is another example of a building which does not follow the street. Because the street here, I'll show you. Where is it? The street here, you see in the black part there. The street is a trapezoid. And even the building does not follow the street, the orthogonal streets, which is Via Procaccini and Corso Sempione. You see there is a void. There is a void. So there are two slabs which are paired and linked by the balconies along the street. But they are two different buildings, and there is a villa suspended above the courtyard. Anyway, it is something put there on the top, above the two slabs. So even this is an example of a building which does not follow the street. And those are interesting readings by students. Different way of looking at it. And then, and now of course, we are talking about Terragni, and here we have Terragni and the seminal book by Eisenman, 50 years book of studies on the Casa del Fascio. And the multiple readings which can be, let's say, developed looking at the Casa del Fascio. One body, 4 turret with a void or a cross inside, infinite possibility of readings. The 4 facades, I mean, those are other readings, because there, if you go to visit the Casa del Fascio, from the outside it seems a block, but it is not, because there is a courtyard which is covered, and then the roof of the courtyard is a sort of patio. In the you can see here. And there are transversal balconies. And so you can see the Duomo with the dome by Juvarra toward the city center. And then a very important building in the back, which is the Unione Lavoratori Fascisti by Cattaneo Lingeri, who was often associated with Terragni in the buildings in Milano. But let's go on. And Magnaghi and Terzaghi. So those are very important readings in that seminal book about this topic. Casa Toninello, again by Terragni e Lingeri, one of the 5 palazzi, houses which were made by the 2 architects in Milano. And those are fantastic readings in 3D made during the COVID again. And of course, everything started in plan, but then a lot of intuition were possible only in these volumetric representations. and the relationship between the bodies of the building, the voids, the distribution parts, I mean, the things which together make one thing, but which are also separated. Everything was made by Skype. Crazy. Really crazy. But we made it, so at least. This is a Snague Vender in the 30s, very famous building along Viale Tunisia, which is the center of Milan Moderna, near it departs from Piazza della Repubblica, which is the real center of Milan Moderna. And also this during the COVID, those are the last works. But this is a very interesting building made by Snague Vender, very abstract, but very subtle and sophisticated, with little shift, very little, almost invisible. For example, part of the facade is set back, but just 1.20 meters, something like this, the red part. There, I mean, now you know because I told you, but otherwise everybody says it's a flat facade. It is not. There is from the fourth floor there is a little setting back, but the balcony distracts you, and you immediately you don't perceive it. And here, through these drawings, everything was analyzed. That is a fantastic building, the last by Terragni, Giuliani Frigerio, which really is another example of a composition which is not made on an idea of concinitas. I mean, the four facades are linked together, but I mean, they are very independent too. And this is the second building which is analyzed in the book on Terragni by Eisenman, and there is an incredible series of readings and confrontation among the four facades. I mean, I put here just some, but there are pages and pages of possible readings and oppositions between the different part of the buildings in plan, but especially on the facades, correspondences and variations and mutations of the ratios, the parts, but still a possibility to confront them, even if they are very different. I mean, the four facades are very different, but they are linked together by, for example, a tripartite scheme, and there are always a part which is protruding, another one which is made almost by openings, another one which is blind. I mean, this is very interesting. You get crazy if you read this book, because you stay there, and then after 50 schemes, you cannot remember the first. You have to restart. I mean, it's a never-ending book, but it is very useful to get used to see. I mean, it's easier to draw. That is a fantastic book. A lot of interpretation. Franco Purini said that a lot of the ideas discovered by Eisenman was never intended by Terragni. Maybe it's true, but who cares? I mean, even if were unintentional, they are in the work. I mean, if you find it, that idea was there. I mean, who cares who found it? If the author or somebody else. If it is there, it is there. And maybe the author intended to do it. Who knows? But who cares in the end? I mean, it's important to get used to go in depth into these drawings, into these ideas. This is a great building by Muzio. There are two buildings, actually, even three, Casa Malugani and Casa Bonaiti. And this is another of these readings we made during the COVID. Look at this. It was an incredible taxonomy made on this building, and trying to relate the two buildings and trying to let's say, invent possible symmetrical schemes which are not there. Okay, so Muzio, the more symmetrical, often makes buildings which are not symmetrical. Maybe for little details, but they are not symmetrical. And again, in 3D, Figini Pollini. This is important. This is a very important building. You see here the spaces are not, the modules are not equal. You can see very well here. AA, no, I don't know. I made a mistake. AAB, AAA. I mean, this is very important. That is not an isotropic scheme. It is a unique scheme. Okay, it is not symmetrical and it is not a series. It is none of the two. Not symmetrical, not a series. This is unique. AAB, AAA. And this is important. And also the front facade on Via Broletto is like this. And we found a possible reading about this. I mean, this is very studied. We always studied this. It's 10 years which we study this building. Here you can see also the front facade. This is the front facade. And you can see that the little gap on the right, the little shift, which makes one of the modules different, even differently than the central building. There are two buildings. This is along the street and the other one is a turret in the middle of the block. There was AAB, AAA. This is AAAA, BA. And this is the explanation, because in the rear part, the rear facade of this building is based on 5 bays. The three central are projected onto the street facade, but there the facade is bigger because of, I mean, the specific condition of the site, and so this little shift was made. So this strange, let's say, this weird facade on the front part of on the building is caused by an equal facade, equal modulus in the rear. Luigi Moretti. This is another great book by Eisenman on close reading. 10 buildings, let's say, after the modern, and this is one of them. After the war, the Second War, by Luigi Moretti in Rome, Casa del Girasole. Totò, a famous actor, was one of the developers. I mean, it is not important. And those schemes are really giving the idea of this rotation, which make the building adapt, but not adapting to the site, because I mean it would have done in very different ways. I think the most important thing is not the adaptation to the context, but this rotation, which is a decisive move, which then organize a lot of the choices of the scheme. And here you can see we have a pattern despite the rotation, which makes it more complicated, but it is typical a series, AB, AB, AB. Typically. There is a very interesting article by Eisenman about the 4 kinds of schemes, which are the compositional, bilateral symmetrical, and then other 3 which are not bilateral symmetrical. The precompositional, like the Definetti, so a missing symmetry, the composite, which is 2 schemes which each is bilateral symmetrical, but they are overlapped, and so together they are a composition of 2 bilateral symmetrical schemes, and then the extra compositional, which is the series A, B, A, B, A, B, which is typically modern like this, even if this building is not typically modern. And this is the greatest building in Milano of the Second World War, after the Second World War and during the reconstruction, the complex of Corso Italia by Luigi Moretti. This is a great building. Again, he couldn't care less about the continuity of the construction along the street. He put a street in the corner, and the street goes into the block and divides even the central building, that one you see on the right, which is, let's say, two bodies above one body, and you can, which is office, and the rest is offices and residential units, and then you can pass through and to arrive in the middle. It's not this one. This one is the first bridge you see near to Corso Italia, and then there is another. You can see it in the left picture. Another body which is continuous, and above it we have the two towers, the two bodies of the main building. Here you see on the left. This is a fantastic building, and this picture on the right is from the Torre Velasca towards the Corso Italia complex. I mean, we could stay here 1 month to talk about this. We don't have time, so we go on. This is the platform on the right, which I was talking about. Those are readings of first-year students. Genova. This is the international workshop, like yours. And those are recent readings. Also these ones, which are very interesting and are together we have the volumes and parts of the building and the facades to see the relationships between, by Mariana Lima, and the relationships between all the parts, and also trying to understand how the building bends on the right side, as you can see there, which is the south facade, the short facade here. And then also the very atypical positioning of the stairs. I mean, they are not aligned. They are one facing west, the other facing east, which is a very strange and intriguing way to have this torsion. I mean, this contributes to the torsion within the plans. Ignazio Gardella and others, collaborators, Castelli Ferrieri Menghi, Casa Giardino d'Ercole, various readings. We have here this apparently random distribution of the balconies and the greenhouses. I mean, we could stay here ages. Oh, this is interesting. This is the first important building by Vittoriano Viganò, who made the greatest building. No, this is not the first. The greatest is the other one. I mean, this is the first, maybe the only one residential, like condo. He made the villa for block on the lake, but I think this, no, maybe he made also another condominium in Milano, but this is the first condominium. Of course, Vittoriano Viganò made the Istituto Marchionne di Spagliardi, which is one of the best buildings in Italy after the war, the Second World War. But this is very interesting because apparently the building is very simple, and it is an ordinary building, but incredibly, this student, Yonggen Zhang, found a 45-degree rotation of a square against another square, which is another rectangle, which is the building itself. And this rotated square put together all the lines. I was shocked because in the rear, the balcony has a terrible 45 degrees cuts on both sides. I was always thinking, what the fuck, why Vittoriano Viganò made this shitty balcony there. I mean, it's impossible. It's really impossible. But the point was this. I mean, that is part of a hidden square, which, I mean, rules also the other front balconies. So this Jongen Zanger, my compliments. I don't know how he found it. I mean, I didn't find it before. So that is, and then those and a lot of other alignments are ruled by this rotated square, and for sure it was made like this. I mean, with the tracing technigrapho, I mean, you had 0, 45, 30, 60 degrees, and was when you were the ruling, when you were using not the computer. I mean, that's for sure. Very interesting, and some other readings, even of in the central drawing of incremental geometry of the blind spaces. So there is a rotation and an incremental geometry which combined give this result, which doesn't seem so extraordinary, even it is significant. But really, I mean, if you read underneath or between the lines, as you can say, you can find incredible ideas which apparently are not visible. Asnago Vender, again, after the war, very famous building, also in La Notte by Michelangelo Antonioni. It was a clinic. Those are the drawings by Cino Zucchi in his beautiful book about this building, which we used to redraw. A lot of students used to redraw this. Minoletti, Casa del Cedro. This is another interesting building in Milano, Via Fate Bene Fratelli, Brera district. Also here, the street is not followed. The buildings are not continuous. Lattice Brothers in Piazza della Repubblica, an interesting building. Also, this one has these apparently random greenhouses, and we are studying this, and it's difficult to find the real reason. Maybe we will make it. Piero Bottoni. This is an unité, one unité made in Milano, not by Le Corbusier, but by Bottoni, a very interesting building, which is basically in front of Casa Rustici, along Corso Sempione, that is orthogonal to Corso Sempione. Very, very modern building, you can say. Very abstract, but still made by pieces. I mean, it is one piece, but it is also pattern of repetitions, as we can see in the readings. For example, these interesting readings which consider that the same building as a lot of different things. One piece, two pieces, one above the other, 4 pieces or more. I mean, you can intend the same object as very different options, alternatives. In plan, and then approaching to contemporary times, one of the best buildings by Gregotti. Gregotti died because of COVID. Also Meneghetti died. I mean, the last 6 months, a lot of architects died. Yesterday, Enzo Mari died. It's tough times. This is an interesting building, very abstract, based on prefabrication, but still able to be analyzed in very various ways. Aldo Rossi, hotel in Piazza della Repubblica, again. This is a very subtle reading of all the modules, and this is a reading in perspective based on the photo by Maurizio Montagna. So it's the reading of a perspective, not even of the real drawing. And this is the last, and this is the project Nodar were referring at the beginning, the Residenze Carlo Erba, which we made with Peter Eisenman and Guido Zuliani, and all we have seen until now, I mean, all those attempts and efforts in studying architecture, in studying these possible alternatives in reading architecture and in interpreting architecture, in looking through the drawings. I mean, they have very practical consequences. I mean, they are not made just for an historical or amateur reason. I mean, of course, if you study the drawings of architecture, you must like them. Otherwise, I mean, you do something else. You go on YouTube. But of course, I mean, it is not pointless. It is not something which is left there. I mean, it is an action, a continuous study, which in the same time is applied to the work of the architect, which is drawing, not reading. Of course, together is much more powerful. I mean, this project is based on a lot of choices, a lot of operations. I mean, I wrote this book, Operazioni, which means operations or actions, based on other books like Una lezione sul disegno by Franco Purini, where he published 30 drawings by him. Each is an action, rotating, duplicating, framing, enveloping. I mean, 30 of them, which are typical actions in when you design a building. That is one very important book about this. The other one is Diagram Diaries by Eisenman, where all his production until the end of the 90s is read through these operations, which are divided into formal and conceptual. So if you are interested in this matter, you must read those two books. But they are on themselves based on very important work of art of the 60s, where actions of artists were reflecting. I mean, their works were reflecting their real actions. I'm talking about, for example, the lists by Richard Serra, who made a list of typical artistic action, let's say. I mean, there are various conceptual artwork like those, which are which were referring to the practical, but that is not only practical because it is also conceptual actions which are utilized, which make the work of art. And this is the building which was finished last year, and it is basically a layering of different strata, one above the other. You can see also the materials reflect these differences in shape. I mean, the shape is the same, this unique, let's say, curve, which bends and insert itself into the block, which is a terrible triangular block, very, very difficult. And then the same shape has a decisive shift in the fourth floor, you can see there. So the travertino base and the Carrara top is the same shape, but one is shifted and moves slightly, because of course you have the continuity of the real structure, you have the continuity of the equipments and so on. You know, but this little shift and the cut of the four floor, I mean, gives a very different image to this building. I mean, it's 9th floor, but it is at the same way as if it is one building and another building above it. I mean, there are 4 strata. One is the travertino, then there is the 4th floor, which is stepped back, and then there is the top 5, which are 5th and 6th, with a golden ratio rectangle which runs along the facade, and then the last 3 floors, which are stepped, as you can see, with these terraces which go from one facade to the other. And then another idea is to have the base as a very solid mass with excavated loggias and windows, and the top made by the opposition between the frame and the mass, the volume. And the frame is switched, is moved. So from this side, you see the frame out, and it gives room to the balconies. On the other side, the frame is in and cuts the volumes, like making little bow windows, 0.5 meter. And here you can see also the shift of the 5 top floors and the others, which stays. On the left, you see the part, also on the right, the part of the facade which is engraved. It are the same lines from one side, top 5 floor, engrave the volume. On the other side, they go out and are visible as frame. Here, for example, it's very clear. And of course, there are a lot of other alignments and series of openings, and also the same stepping is made accordingly to a special series, which is not, of course, symmetrical nor a simple series, but it is a unique series which is repeated 4 times. And then the stepping is slightly different than the modulus of the frame, just in one point, repeated 4 times. This is the very intriguing reading of the building, making 34 sections along the building itself, and it shows how the top part moves related to the bottom part and to the 4th floor, which is the red one. That was made by Wang Juliang during the COVID period. So she analyzed Muzio, and then she went to this and made this sort of automatic work of reading, but very, very significant. The interiors, we were really surprised of how the atmosphere is similar to the Casa del Fascio. We didn't do it on purpose, maybe. Anyway, it's similar. Here we see this, let's say, bending and distortion of the grid into the triangular site. That is another important topic, how the volume was organized inside. And now I show you another project where it is straight. We made this one with Franco Purini in Genova for a competition, and here we don't have the bending and the adaptation of the building within that strange and weird triangle which made us crazy. Here the succession is a double golden section, so you see horizontal golden section, square, vertical golden section. And the two orders below are in golden section with the two orders above. Here is different because of the water. So the first is not a golden section, but if you step in the middle of the courtyard, it is. I think we arrived last because we went out of the border of the competition. I mean, half of the program was out of the border, but we had a great fun. I mean, we liked a lot to make it. Here is the let's say bow window engraved. It's the engraved part. That is a fake historical building which was rebuilt in the 50s after it was bombed, and we finished the work because inside it was substituted completely. Anyway, it was completely fake. It's not bad. That was another competition in Brescia based on a tripartite scheme, like we saw in Giuliani Frigerio, both vertically and horizontally. This is another reference to a project we made this summer with the Studio Morphe in Sofia, Bulgaria. I wanted to understand why Moretti made the cuts into the Corso Italia complex, and here we tried with the Timo, our Bulgarian partner in this project, to understand if was the grid to engrave the cut. I don't think that in case of Moretti was the grid. In this case it is. And so we try to see how it would be if the grid is engraving a plane. Because a friend told me that those engraving in the villa, in that building by Moretti, are like a fontana work. Lucio Fontana, who used to cut the canvas. I never thought about it in that sense. I mean, Moretti for me was others, but maybe it is. In this way, we made differently, and we tried to link the cut with the structure. And below we have a part which is a sort of crescent, like the Watergate by Moretti himself. In the top part, we have this attempt to understand the mutual relationships between the grid and the volume. In Carlo Erba, the grid is out on one facade and it's in on the other facade. Here, the grid goes in and out. For example, here in the right part, the grid is in and it makes the bow window. From the middle, more or less, here of this view, to the left, the grid goes outside and then it goes inside again in the head, where it goes inside and it makes the cuts. And here you see that the same lines of the grid on the one side, those same lines, those elements which are lines, which is a drawing. here makes this, and the same makes this on the other side, based on the relationship with the volume. And this is something which can be studied. It's something which can be applied, as we did in Sofia with during this July. I mean, and this shift is based on the disegno. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lorenzo, for this amazing lecture that you gave us. And I'm now wondering if any of online attendants or physical attendants got some questions. So, if you, yes, it would be better if you come.
Okay, hello. As I understood it, as I listened, you made a quite smooth transition from almost the classical, like classical times to the modernity, to a bit of postmodern, to the current. It was like quite smooth transition. That is, and we felt that all these examples that you showed is almost in our hands. We can see all this span of time, which is, I think, one of the good things that we could hear this evening, for which I'm so grateful, and thank you. And I have a question.
I'm losing contact.
Did you hear anything that I said? Or?
I heard at the beginning, but then I lost contact 10 seconds ago.
Okay. Is it fine now? Or?
Please?
Yes.
Okay, I guess it's fine. So, did you hear my question, or I need to repeat it?
No, I heard.
I didn't ask question. I said thank you, but now I have
in our hands.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I have the question. So first, you started to explain the patterns and describe the characters of those patterns, like the ratio, symmetry, series, using all these languages of mathematics. We translated into the language of architecture. But then you mentioned one of the examples when you explained the city of Milan, I guess, and you said that if you like do not align building on the street, it's a kind of crime. You said, and then you used the words like apparently random or almost a hidden square in the generating those patterns and those making buildings by pieces, which is, in my opinion, something that does not belong to the. As much as I can understand, does not belong to the language of modern architecture. It's not necessarily about like putting things together in a single order, but what you explained is completely opposite, as I understood. So I have a sense that you are describing that the challenge in architecture is, as I understand, these architectures that you explained and showed is about challenging something. If I'm right, if you could elaborate more on that, it would be so. I would be grateful again. So yeah, if you could say what are these all?
I mean,
my generous.
Yes, thank you. From I think that the point is that from the beginning, there are a normative attitude. Okay, from the beginning, if you think about the treatises, for example, I mean the attempt to normalize and the attempt to let's say contain the infinitive possibilities of design into something. I mean, if we think about the canon, the order in itself, I mean, that is something which occurs and always occurs when a style becomes defined step by step and canonized, it becomes a canon, this canonization, this fact, erase a lot of other possibilities. Okay, so the point is, I'm not against the rules. Okay, I don't say that you have to go against the rules, because if you do something to go against the rules, you are convalidating the rules. I mean, if your actions are intended as breaking the rules, I think you are convalidating them. Because in the end, you are saying the same. If the windows has to be put in the center of the wall, and you don't put it there because it is to be put there, you are saying that it is to be put there. For me, I mean, your action are, let's say, ruled anyway by the rule. So the point is, how can you design? I mean, when I was a student, but today is exactly the same. The point is that why I choose this or that. How can I choose? How can I choose? So I don't want to be inside the normative condition. I mean, a normative condition is not the new. If you follow a normative condition, you are doing something which is already there. But even if you are doing something against the normative condition, you are doing anything intelligent in itself. I mean, it makes no sense to me. The point is, how can you set different conditions which force you to maybe discover the new without applying to the normative of your times, or of a style, of without copying and other architects directly. I mean, you cannot copy, you cannot follow a normative condition, you cannot do simply differently, because in that case it's new, because in that case it's simply strange, so who cares? I think what you do must be anyway linked with architecture. You cannot say, if I do something very strange, if I put a scarf on a building, it's different, and so it's okay. No, I mean, that is not significant. What is okay to me is in reading all the things which are suppressed in time, in reading all the buildings which are usually intended as normative, then you can see that they are not normative. They are not normative. I mean, the rules are made by bureaucrats. They don't care. But of course, there is a big gap between something against the rule and setting up the conditions where you can develop a process. So that is the reason because I went to meet Eisenman 20 years ago. Because in my opinion, he was very, very skillful in setting the conditions, setting the diagram. I mean, you can say it in various things. In making the environment in which you can proceed. And that is from the one side based on ideas, and on the other side that is based on these procedures. Okay, but those are not normative procedures. Those are procedures which try to find into specific cases specific ideas. And that is against a style, that is against a rule, that is against good manner. We have an architect in Milano which says that architecture in the end is good manner. Yes, okay. Who cares? I mean, you don't have to be rude, but you don't have to to say these silly things. I mean, that is not good manner. I think that architecture needs to be studied. In studying architecture, you see how it worked in very different authors, in very different works, and that is the only way to operate. I mean, if you want to be a poet, you start with the alphabet. You start with the alphabet, and you say, okay, now I am able to read, and then I'm able to write, and maybe in the end you will be able to write a poem. Or if you want to compose a piece of music, what do? You play and you listen. I mean, for me, it is not easy, because it takes time, it takes effort, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and continuously thinking about this. I mean, it is not easy. You can do a project very easily. You do it, it's done. Okay, nobody cares in the end. So nobody cares if the grid goes inside, if the frame goes inside and then goes outside. Nobody cares about this. No client will care. But they do care in the end about the final image. I mean, nobody went to back and asked, why are you permutating your notes like this? I mean, listen. If you like it, you like it. If you don't like it.
Sorry, Lorenzo, could you please repeat the last sentence?
Yes, I think that nobody went to Sebastian Bach and asked Sebastian Bach, why are you arranging notes like this? I mean, he was doing this. I mean, he was arranging notes in his way. Or Beethoven, you will, I'm sure, you will hear about Beethoven on Wednesday. So Beethoven, at one point of his career, started to compose in a different manner. I mean, he knew what he was doing. I would like to know. That's the point. So, I mean, it's a very long discourse. I don't know if I have answered.
I didn't really expect the answer. I just wanted to talk further about that. Because there is no, if there is an answer, we wouldn't be here to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess now is the time for online attendance, let's say. And who would like to ask the question? I guess there was Juan who was trying to connect us with a question.
I would like to ask a question, if I can. So we saw formal analysis of buildings, but the same kind of patterns, repetitions, links between differences, mutations, and variations can be found also on the city. And that's important to also express, especially in Milan, for example, which is a drawn city. So what are the differences, what the similarities, and the connections between these two kind of process, if there are, because that's the question, if there are, how the formal analysis of Carlo Erba's surrounding affected the project, and how the project affected the formal analysis of that part of the city?
Okay, thank you. I mean, the influence, let's say, of the context is a typical obsession of Milanese people like me. I mean, you are not Milanese, but Milanese people are obsessed with the context. If you go to Politecnico, you will hear always that the building has to be consistent with the context, and you don't know what does it mean. I mean, what is that? How is the consistency between the building and the context? I mean, it makes no sense. I mean, it depends on the context. It depends on the building. I mean, it makes no sense to me to think that, let's say, the context somehow influence the building, even if, of course, if you are doing something there, you are not going to do something somewhere else. Okay, that is true. I mean, you are making a building in that specific site. I mean, that is already influencing. Even if you don't consider at all the context, that is really strong that you are doing that one there, even if you don't consider the context. And you, anyway, consider the context somehow. I mean, you have to get in, you have to get out. You see the building from one side, you see the building from another side. But for example, what if you think all your project, you design all your project because the points of view are those, for example. And then after 2 years, everything is demolished. So what about your project? I mean, you based on everything of your project about those important points of view, and then a developer goes there and makes a big redevelopment, and everything changes. And so, what about your project? Okay, and so I mean, I'm much more interested in the second part of the question, which is how your building influence the context. I mean, this is much more interesting. I mean, not how let's say the normative condition, which can be physical, which can be cultural, influence your project, while how your project can open new paths. Okay, as I said, your design, your idea doesn't need to be against. I mean, it doesn't need to be against, but which new paths, which new trajectories your design opens. I mean, that is interesting, much more than how your design is fucked up by the context. So, and I think that we shouldn't be obsessed by the context. Also because a lot of people are already. I mean, there are the building commissions, there are your friend, the university, there are a lot of people who says, you cannot do that. So it's their concern. It's enough. It's trouble anyway. Okay. And we can try to think more how your building can face a situation without taking that situation as coercive. On the other side, without taking that situation as an enemy. That I would say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we would have one more question.
I have also one question. Sorry, Nalar.
Yes, sure.
Maybe this
Sorry, what was it? Were you saying?
No, could you repeat the question?
So first of all, thanks a lot. It was really mind-blowing to listen to this whole analysis and to understand how all these compositions create the building and how the compositions overlay. And in a way, listening to this presentation, the first thought which comes to you is somehow that we can say that architecture is somehow self-contained discipline, and when architect creates something, he tries to develop his own interests, and the building is result of it. And I totally agree with this idea. But I also think that sometimes architecture can go beyond it and imply also the meaning. And I don't think that I don't mean by the meaning of something bad or something good, but I think that when you position your building somehow in the city, it can be political also, or can imply any other idea which can be really important. Maybe you open the access with your building towards a certain historical monument, or maybe when Giorgio Grassi made his plans for Milanese buildings, he had some political intention to open certain paths. Or yes, so my question is basically, can architecture go beyond itself and beyond being the self-contained discipline, and can it imply the meaning which is also somehow connected to the discipline directly?
Thank you. So I think that architecture in itself is very, very within the real. I mean, not architecture, but construction. Construction in itself is really inside the city, inside the economy, inside politics, inside all of this. I mean, if you build, you have to face all this. Otherwise, you don't build. This is clear. Given that, I think that form cannot be directly linked with those topics. I mean, when you design a building, you are designing something which is already within a very complex set of conditions of any type. I mean, first of all, you need to have the commission. You need to go on with the construction, or you need to have the founding, or the building needs to be sold or rented, whatever. I mean, all those things already are there. They already are there. I think they cannot be considered as something. I mean, they are already considered. I mean, when you do something, when you do a construction, you cannot have the water sinking in. When you do a construction, the construction has to stand up. It has to resist. It has to bear weights and whatever. The construction needs to avoid cold and wind and rains to get in, of course. And it has to be used, all of this. This is sure. And this is obvious. But I don't think the activity and the point of the architect has to be that. I mean, that is not the point of the architect. The point of the architect is not even self-contained. Yes, autonomous. You said autonomous in the end. It is autonomous, given that it has to face all of those aspects. But I think that if one of those aspects is over-considered, there is no space left for the specificity of architecture, which is form. So the point is how you can think about form given all those conditions, which is much more difficult. it would be much easier just to face them and to say, oh, there is the global warming. I put a tree on the balcony. It is much better, much easier. Oh, it is very hot, so I put 2 trees. I mean, it is nice. That is very, very, how do you say, responsible. So I think that we are already overwhelmed about all those things, and we need to make space for form, not for space. We have to make space, so to get rid of other things, to make their form. Maybe. I mean, it's not easy at all. It is not easy at all. They always would say, why don't you put the trees on the balconies? So you put the trees on the balconies. Why not? But you cannot start from that, okay? I mean, all the houses. I mean, I have a balcony here. Look, that is a balcony, and I can put a banana, a little banana on the balcony during the summer, or a little Christmas tree on December. But that cannot be the reason. Okay, that can be one of the uses. Why not? I got bitten by a spider this July in the balcony. So now I'm changing my mind. I don't want more balconies on the in the houses. I mean, it is very dangerous. They say those balconies and green and whatever will save the world. I was bitten by the spider. Come on, that is very dangerous to have all those plants around. I mean, we are citizens. We are not savages. If you want trees, we put trees. No problem.
Super fun. Great conversation. So, could we assume that the answer is over? I guess, yeah, right? And it could be also one more question if anybody wants. And for you, Lorenzo, is okay.
I have one question, Lorenzo. Thank you for the lecture. In case of Palazzo Belgioioso, I don't remember the name of the architect. You said in comparison to Muzio, no, that Muzio Novecento being a modern or a classical, and the architect of Belgioioso also being a modern in a sense that there was an aspect of abstraction in the work already. So here is the question, no, that thing of an abstraction. So is it something that can be defined when it started, and that is the thing that defines actually the sort of shift in the architectural thinking? And because it seems to be in that word hides the devil, no, of splitting the modern from the past world that is not present anymore. So the question would be about abstraction, no, if you could enlarge a bit.
All right, thank you. Yes, I mean, there are a lot of starting points for the modern. So it is very difficult to say this is the one. So let's say maybe I just try to slightly manipulate your question. That is, tell me some of the starting points of abstraction. And so that is much easier. I mean, otherwise we have to go to Plato. We have to go to Plato, to Pythagoras, and then it's very dangerous because it's exoteric. There are these numbers. I mean, Pythagoras started with the tetractys, 1, 2, 3, 4, and now we have Bill Gates. If he knew that, It would, I mean, he said that was a secret, but then we got with Bill Gates. So I don't know. Anyway, without going back so much, but we should. I mean, we should talk about Plato. We should talk about Pythagoras. And on the other side, there is the matter. Okay, the matter. And so Democritus, I mean, Democritus is more or less abstract than Plato. I mean, he was talking about the atom. Who could, I mean, how Democritus or then it goes, and we have Lucrezio and a lot, but how can they knew about this? And that is abstract, or it is the matter. So matter is material. That is not abstraction. So I don't want to go there because we are not philosophers. I don't know anything about this. So maybe I go to an architect. One of the starting points is Piranesi. If you go to Santa Maria al Priorato, you are in Rome, I remember. Okay, so ask to those people, but be very prudent because they are this chevaliership. So ask them to go in Santa Maria del Priorato, which is one of maybe the only architecture by Piranesi. And there is the altare, and you go the altare from behind, and there is abstraction. You will see there is a sphere. So in the front, the altare is a statue with all the things, plastic, all the things which need to be, okay? Figure, plastic, modellato, everything. In the rear, the composition is bared by a sphere. And then Tafuri wrote La Sfera e il Labirinto. And he quoted Santa Maria a Priorato, the only architecture by Piranesi, which has the altar by Piranesi, which the great composition of masses, whatever, which is bared by a globe, a sphere. Okay, so that is abstraction. Or if you go slightly back, another abstraction can be Bernini. If you go to Bernini sculptures, which were studied by Moretti again, the modanatura of Bernini sculptures, if it is seen from close, it is no more a textile, it is no more something figurative, it is abstract. Okay, so you have 16th century and you have 18th century. And of course, you have 19th century with the neoclassical, which I was referring before. And of course, you have, 20th century with abstract. The abstract is, of course, 20th century. I mean, in art, abstract. And you know that in Russia, they call the same art concrete. Okay, just to be, I mean, just not to make confusion. And so you have in any century forms of abstractions. There must be, but there are specific cases. So it's better to see Villa Melzi in Bellagio by Albertolli, which is 1840. This is one example. Another example is the altare of Santa Maria del Priorato behind by Piranesi. And those things, I think, are suitable of developments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now, if nobody got the question, I would have a very slight final question about the sections that you showed us at the end of the presentations about Carlo Erba residence. You showed us these 30 different sections following kind of the curve of the building. and showing the relationship of the lower bass and the top shift and the part and how it changed. That was very interesting for me, because I'm thinking about Degli Esposti's approach towards this, because somehow I understood that this was kind of also surprise for you, that the student who analyzed this building got this insight to the building. And my question is, how much Degli Esposti's projects are designed in a way then that to be read in the future? How much do you think that there might be also another and much more interpretations and the kind of insights and breakthroughs that you don't even know that you did?
Thank you. I think that you can make very different kinds of architecture. One of these is an architecture which needs to be read. For example, a lot of other architects do architectures which mustn't be read. Okay, they don't care. This kind of architectures which needs and must and can be read are a way for me which is necessary. I couldn't do anything else. Well, if my concern was why I'm doing this, among the questions, I could choose because of the global warming. Also, that is a reason. Or I can say because of politics. There are today a lot of architects and scholars which says that architecture is political, etc., etc., etc. Okay, that is maybe another reason. I think that to be read is a way for architecture to stay connected with both its presentness, because we are making that, and while you are making that, you are asking to yourself what I'm doing, why I'm doing this, but even with the past and the future. You are doing that one today, but of course, if it is readable, it seeks for somebody to read. So for sure, it is made like this. The risk to avoid is that the image take advantage of this. If you are confined into a style, it is not really readable. It is just a surface image. So the problem is I think, I don't know, because I'm 43, so I don't know, but growing, I think the point is how to change without being yourself still. But for sure, I think that we are in the same condition of a poet and of a musician. I think so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you again to everybody. Thank you, Lorenzo, for this interesting, very, I would say, amazing lecture that you present to us. Thank to Tbilisi Architectural Biennial, and thank to all the tutors, lecturers, online and physical students that are attending to our workshop. Thanks to my group mates who made all of this possible. And I think it would be a great journey to this workshop. And I would like to again thank you for this insights that you presented to us. And basically, I would say that you made this workshop to the next level.
I thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here and there with you. Thanks to our powerful means. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Buona serata, Lorenzo.
Bye bye.
So,
Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.